You guys. Okay, Michaela, one more time. Sorry, I apologize for that.
I'm a project manager at Spark Northwest. I have crossed paths with Carol in numerous ways over the years, and several years ago she had reached out about kind of ideas around developing more housing for Black, Indigenous, and artists of color in Seattle. I read an awesome, sorry, am I creating feedback here?
Oh, that's better. Yeah, that was a little bit.
I don't know what it might be, but yeah. So I saw an update last year that you had acquired a property for your project, and just wanted to check in. I have a few solar funding opportunities through my work at Spark Northwest. I generally play the role of connecting people to resources and helping to compile grant applications for renewable energy projects. And so I just wanted to reach out and see if we can help move forward energy planning or funding applications for solar projects in the future. And my positive word for the day is green tea. That's 2 words, but
nice and warm and toasty. Love it. Who'd like to go next? Curtis?
All right, I am Curtis Brown. I'm Executive Director of the Brighton Development Group, and we do land development down in Rainier Valley, working on anti-displacement, and I'm currently working with Carol on some of her projects, and I'm actually in the middle of a solar project myself, putting solar panels on top of the Brighton.
Whoa, that's so cool. I did not know that.
Yes, I haven't actually made an announcement, but yes, that's actually should have been done, but structural engineer is holding up the project. But hopefully we'll be done with that, and we'll start putting those solar panels on. Now we're just waiting on the permit from the city. So it's the only holding stuff is the city. So.
Congratulations. I'm excited for you. Thank you, Curtis. Would you like to go?
Hi, everybody. I've met everybody on this call. You all know me. But Michaela, just so you know, my relationship to this project is that it's part of the Interweave program. So we work with a number of different community-led and serving initiatives, focusing on frontline communities with these innovative solutions around climate action, climate change, and sustainability. And we work to just kind of help build the robustness of those projects and just help them be viable and succeed and address hurdles. And similar to what you do for solar work, we do for kind of community organizers.
Great. Thank you, Em. And of course, I'm Carol. Everybody here knows me. I am currently with BIPOC Sustainable Tiny Art House Community. And Michaela, we haven't really had too much conversation since this project has actually launched. And so maybe I'll just give you a little bit of background around what it is and why we're interested. So basically, BIPOC STAC, I'm going to use STAC as a short acronym, is a means and a community development model that can help to build equity long-term for artists of color. And what I'm starting to learn is that this model could actually be highly replicable with other types of individuals with other types of backgrounds. So like single mom community, or folks who are being aged out of foster care community, or folks with like Down syndrome community. So it can be like targeted to different groups of people, not just artists, although this particular project is for artists. And in order to do that, how it's designed is that it's twofold. One is providing affordable housing for folks, and the other one is providing like job shadowing, leadership, actual potential opportunities in which people are actually making a living wage. And so when you couple those two together, folks are able to actually grow themselves, right? And if they're able to actually, instead of rent, purchase their housing, then that in the long term, they can build equity over time and then either sell the house or actually get equity out of that and start their own business, you know, help their kids, do whatever they need to do in the long term, right? And so that is the main goal of this project. And the reason that I'm focusing on artists is because, specifically artists of color, is specifically because I feel like artists of color are leaving Seattle in droves because they can't afford the rent there. Most of them cannot afford to purchase a house, specifically if they're by themselves, if they're like a single family household, or if they're a single mom like I was, unless they're working for another company or organization and they're giving away their time, right? So like if you're working for Microsoft or Amazon and you're working 40 hours a week, you come home and you're exhausted. How much time do you really have to put towards your art career? How much time do you really have to put towards building a business that's sustainable long term? And so the idea is that we build the tiny homes in partnership with Arch Cabin, which is a model where Arch Cabin builds the exterior and we build out the inside from reused, upcycled materials. And their model is, their mission is actually directly aligned with our mission in terms of the reason their company was created was because the father wanted the same thing. He wanted to see his community be able to afford housing. And so their tiny house model is not only affordable, but it's sustainable. And they come in multiple sizes from 8 by 12, which is the smallest, to 20 by 30, which is the largest. And so you can have like a 1-room tiny home, you can have a two-room tiny home, you can have 1-story tiny home, 2-story tiny homes, and they last the length of a traditional house, which was really important for me. And they're insulated R15. I think that's the highest. Yeah, I'll have to double check that again. And then they're painted on the outside also with like the highest quality of sustainable materials. And so the concept is that they're also, you can put solar panels on them. That was another reason why I was also interested in them. And you can retrofit them with like a wood stove or other stuff, right? So that's basically the model of the whole thing. And this past year, we've hired 4 artists thus far that have come on as consultants part-time. And 2 are currently with us making, you know, it's like $25 an hour. And the hope is that for the first year, artists make $25 an hour, and then the second year, their rate goes up because within the first year, they're job shadowing, learning all about tiny houses, sustainability, business models, all this stuff, right? Yeah, so that's basically the model. And we're really excited that you got a hold of me and reached out. Em or Curtis, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think you got it.
Is it kind of like a cooperative land trust where like the collective of people own the property and or the land? Like how is, and this is kind of background context, but like how do people own the property or pay for the property, and who is the organization that is facilitating or owning or financing?
Right. So currently, the model that's at the Holly House, which is 4627 in Southeast Seattle, is actually owned by Curtis and the Brighton Development Group. And the future model, so this is the pilot program, it's the pilot to even see if it's feasible and if we can actually do it. The future is that I am leaning actually towards land trust, where the land is held in perpetuity for everybody that is a part of the project, but the house itself is sold. The house belongs to whoever purchases it. The artist purchased the house. There are 3 different basic models. So the first model is where you have a house with land on it, or you have a piece of land with a house on it. The other model is where you just have a piece of land, and you have to, in Seattle, their permitting and zoning is that you have to have a larger structure. So if we have just land, we would put a large tiny house on there. That would be the community space, which everybody shares, and then put tiny houses around that. The third model is where you actually work with an organization like a church or a park or like an urban farm, and then you put tiny houses in their space, and then there's a central community space. So that's the idea and the concept for the future, is that the artists own the houses, but the land is held in perpetuity for communities long-term over time.
So it sounds almost exactly like the land trust concept, like homestead or proud ground, where there's an organization that owns the land, and then folks can own properties. It's held in perpetuity so that it stays affordable.
Right, exactly. But it's not the land that folks will own, it's actually the house. Yes, it is like that.
That sounds.
I've been having conversations with Homestead. I know Kathleen, we worked together 20 years ago. We're really good friends. And I've been having conversations also with, oh my gosh, it's not Sandy. I forgot her name, but she works with Lopez Island Community Land Trust, and she's pretty amazing too. So I've been having a lot of dialogues with folks around how they're structuring. And I also been talking to Ann Falk, because she actually lives in a apartment building that is a co-op space for artists. And so that's a whole different kind of concept, where you take an apartment building and everybody owns their own apartment space, but they all own the actual building. So that's also a very interesting model. And I think Curtis kind of is leaning towards that model. I'm not sure.
Well,
but
just for the property, just for the Holly
at
House
this
property,
location,
so
yeah.
not the. I am agnostic. I'm an agnostic. I believe in all models. That's why I work with Carol. I believe in all models.
I love that.
I'm not agnostic. I guess I'm pantheist. I believe in everything. I'm Pantheon Homes. I believe in all models.
So, and then the pilot project at Holly House, it's owned by Beacon Development Group, and
No. By the Brighton Development Group.
Sorry, Beacon
That's,
was
no
another
worries.
developer. Brighton Development Group. Is it so? Is the plan for the Holly House to turn into a land trust model?
No.
Not currently. No,
not currently. And most likely is because of the zoning of the land, unless things change, there's a better use for the land. So the purpose of this is a long-term model, so she can get everything going. So people can walk through the houses, and we got meetings there. So we can show, because an example would be just down the street, without getting too far, I'm working on trying to raise about $100 million for our neighborhood to buy up as much property as we can. So kind of a big steer. So one property down the street that I talked to Carol about, I said, Carol, man, if there's a way for us to grab that property, it'd be a perfect first case scenario. It's a double lot. It's got a house and an ADA on it. I mean, it's perfect to put a bunch of small houses around that, and you could land trust that, you could condominiumize that. I mean, there's all kinds of ways. That the way it's zoned is a perfect first project. However, it's hard in the work that Carol and I do, a lot of times it's hard for people to visualize an idea. So we just jumped in without saying we need to get her idea visualized, and so people can literally touch it and feel it, so it's real. So the purpose of the Holly House property is for people to walk through small houses, see how they would sit on the land. So, and then hopefully by the time we're doing that, we'll hopefully have a whole piece of another land that we can actually start doing it on. But so the Holly House is about having a physical, visual touching of an idea that is real.
Is that owned by Brighton Development Group then?
Not the house. The house will be owned by the Tiny House Group.
Okay, and Brighton owns the land.
Correct.
Awesome. Okay, I think I'm clear. This is great. Cool.
Yep.
Thank you for the updates. This is awesome. Okay.
Em, did you have anything to add to that?
I'm just taking notes.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Thanks,
I just
Curtis.
wanted to
I
make
didn't
sure.
add that address to the notes.
Okay, then I should probably share just, the short description of the resources that I'd sent you all. Just, I had pitched some ideas out there. The ones they're really specific to solar projects, but I'm just kind of like throwing some out there to different community groups to see what sticks. The first one that I had mentioned is a renewable energy credit purchase program through City Light. They are purchasing renewable energy credits from projects that are over 30 kilowatts. So renewable energy credits are essentially like the bragging rights to the greenness of the energy. So if I had a solar system on a food bank, for example, the food bank would get to keep the energy credits on the utility bill, but then to help them pay for the project, they can sell the bragging rights to the greenness. So that 100 kilowatt hours or whatever, 100,000 kilowatt hours or whatever that they're generating, City Light can claim that towards greening the grid. And
That's the one that we're doing.
Say it again.
That's the one that we're doing.
Oh, great. Okay.
And we'll actually be the first one done. So we're pretty excited about that.
Cool. So you're familiar with that program. And they had a program that was open in the beginning part of the year that was open only to affordable housing, or it was only open to certain, I think, low-income service providers. They have since opened it more flexibly to nonprofit groups this fall. So there's a cycle open. I think it opened at the beginning of this month. They didn't post a deadline that I could see, but they're going to review those applications in Q1 of next year. So I'm assuming we want to have that in by, I'd say by December. The application is fairly straightforward. It's mostly about a little narrative about the organization, and then approximately how much the project can generate in terms of kilowatt hours, and a few other technical questions, but it's not too complex. The second one that I sent you is it's a foundation that distributes grants to nonprofits looking to close the gap on funding for solar projects. So the grants are up to $25,000, and they are looking for leverage. So they like to see that the host organization has done some capital campaign or crowdfunding, or has other grants to bring to the table. I don't think they require it. It seems like a very, very flexible foundation funding. Kilowatt hours, electric company. What's the name of the foundation? Name of the foundation is Hammond Climate Solutions. Their program that funds solar is called their Solar Moonshot program. Yeah, and it is, I can send you a link, but it's pretty easy to find, and it's like a very straightforward application. It is literally a Google form on their webpage, followed by an interview with their program manager. So as far as grant programs go, it's awesome. And then the third that I'd sent you all is, what is the third one that I sent you? Sorry, I can't recall. Oh, is the Centralia Transition, the Centralia Coal Transition Grant. So TransAlta's Centralia plant is closing. They have committed funds to helping the transition to clean energy through 3 programs. One of them is on workforce development in the Lewis and Thurston County areas. The second is a weatherization grant that also supports efficiency and weatherization in Lewis and Thurston County. And the third is an energy technology grant that is applicable to anywhere in Washington. And that application is a little more lengthy. It's a lot more narrative descriptions about the organization. And I can't remember if there's a cap. Oh, it's up to 50% of the project cost. The energy technology grant. Okay. And then I'm going to pause there so that you all can go through the questions in the chat.
Wait, do you want to start at the very first one?
Kilowatt hours.
Yeah, so I'm curious about the whether or not, I mean, so we have to know what our kilowatt hours are in order to apply for that grant. Doesn't the city already know that, or how does that work?
It's easy to figure out. You can just figure it out. But on this grant, this particular one's not going to qualify because it's not going to meet the minimum standards though. That's the problem on this project.
So
Okay.
for the City Lights Rec program, they're looking for projects over 30 kilowatt hours, which I think is in the range of like 2,000 square feet of roof space. I think in this recent cycle, you can combine multiple properties into one project. I think I have to look into that because I wasn't looking to like combine multiple projects, but I think that is possible. So it's about 2,000 square feet of space. In terms of kilowatt hours, they want to purchase the credits of the renewable energy that you're generating. So if you say, for example, I want to install 30 kilowatts of solar panels on the roof, they will roughly generate like 1,000 kilowatt hours per installed kilowatt in the Puget Sound area. So you could say that like 30 kilowatts of installed solar will generate 30,000 kilowatt hours over the course of the year. Multiply that by 5 years, and that's how much you can project that you can sell to City Light. So that's like the kilowatt hour estimation.
And when you say that you sell it to City Light, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right. So we would need to pay the upfront cost to install the solar panels. We could maybe use one of these other grants to do that. And then we sell the energy credit back to Seattle City Light. And so we get additional revenues to like retroactively offset the cost. Okay.
That's actually not how the program works. There's no upfront cost actually. It's a partnership with the Washington State Fair Housing Commission. Finance Commission. So there's a loan from them, and on completion, it's paid for. So there's actually should be very little money that you have to put out.
It's paid for by Seattle City Light.
Well, it's paid for. They pay the credits up front. So
okay.
So upon commissioning. So
yeah.
So and some installers are flexible. Like some of them will accept, 30% up front, and then another 20% once you in order to procure the equipment. Some of them will require 50%. So like the installers may, require that upfront, but the rec purchase program is structured as a prepayment. So instead of giving you, an amount after every year you're producing energy, they have offered to prepay for 5 years of the credits. So they will pay that full amount upon commissioning the system.
And then do they monitor the actual like kilowatt outputs? Or
I
is it
don't
just
think
kind of
so.
like,
Yeah.
based on the square footage, this is what we assume that you're making? Like, if for like it's a cloudy year, you don't produce that much
Yeah.
kilowatts, you're not gonna like owe the money back.
No. They pay the credits up front, and the calculations are all done up front. My concern too
Okay.
is we wouldn't have a south-facing roof. I'm just saying on the particular property. I don't think just off of going just fresh off of the project. I don't think we would qualify for the program at multiple levels. 1, size, 2, south-facing roof. So I mean, there's a number of things that are problematic with this particular project that I just don't think it's going to work. But I can certainly I can connect with Sherry. I mean, I can have that found out in a day. So we can go through this whole process quickly.
So then another one of my questions around that is that if it won't work for this particular property, I guess I'm curious, because one of the things that you just said, Michaela, that I think is also very interesting, that ties into also what Curtis said earlier around us working with Brighton Development Group and purchasing other properties, not just this property. And I'm curious if you could find this out, if it can be used on multiple pieces of property, because then if it could work for this property, is what my understanding is that if there's another piece of property that we also have and we're getting both done, or at least like in the pipeline, right? How does that work?
I am just guessing if they do allow, I'm trying to look it up now. If they do allow a combination of different sites, that it would have to be, what do you call it? Simultaneous, like it would have, hang on, I'm pulling it up now. Multiple solar installations on the same or contiguous parcels may qualify to be aggregated to meet the minimum system size requirement. So they'd have to be on the same parcel or contiguous parcels.
Which changes our plan because I don't personally own the property, but I have 2 contiguous parcels there. So that, and those have facing roof, so that could make it possible.
Well, and the other thing too is that depending on where we place the tiny house, that could be south facing as well. I don't know, in the backyard, because the backyard is south. It's like southeast kind of. It's interesting. So my other question about that particular grant is, when does it all have to be implemented by? Like, do you get a year? Do you get 2 years? By the end of next year, okay. Can you talk a little bit about the other 2? It sounds like the third one we are really not eligible for, unless it's the technology part of it, but I don't really know. I can't think right now what we would use that for. So
the energy technology grant could be for, well, let me pull it up also, but I've used it for solar projects. So it's up to 50% of solar, and actually they include storage as well.
up to 50%, you said?
Yeah. So between the Centralia grant and the REC purchase program through City Light, that could fund 100% of a project, because so if an installation is, say, around like 250 a watt, then the REC purchase would pay for over half of that. And then if TransAlta pays for up to 50%, it could cover the full cost of the project. If it's but sorry, the REC program will only pay for the solar production. It wouldn't pay for energy storage if there's batteries involved.
So then we would have to buy the batteries, is what you're saying?
Yes. The Energy Technology Grant will include, I'm gonna read it. The Energy Technology Fund supports projects in Washington State that benefit clean air, air quality, or the environment. Eligible projects could include green energy technologies. I'm assuming that includes solar and storage, alternative fuels, and other products or processes that increase conservation or minimize pollution. Wow, that is broad.
Or minimize pollution. I like that. So like that means, can we do anything? No. Huh. Yeah, I'm still having a hard time trying to like think of what that could be used for. I know it sounds broad to you, but I guess that I only have a layman's understanding of solar at this point, and so really understanding like what that all could come together around.
I think that's an example. I got a grant for solar plus storage on a church campus that has multiple services and campus partners on it. So they own the property, but they have like Refugee Women's Alliance and the Nurturing Roots and Got Green on their campus. And so they applied for 50% of a solar plus storage system.
Interesting. Okay.
And then
I know that building.
And actually, and for the remainder applied for the Centralia grant. So they paired the two to cover the cost of the system.
Got it.
I have a logistical question, kind of going back to the earlier conversation about the models. I might just still be a little bit behind on keeping up with kind of what lives where, but we were talking about the Holly House being a demonstration site, but ultimately the project kind of permanently living at this other plot of land. So I'm wondering, is this conversation for when the new plot of land is eventually developed, or if Stack will own the Holly House but not the land? Can you just revisit that for me? I'm just trying to figure out if Stack doesn't end up on Holly House permanently, or are we talking about this for a future project?
I think that's a question for Carolyn Curtis.
Yeah, and I'm not sure who you're directing it at, Anne, but Curtis and I just had a conversation about because you're talking also, I think, about the 0.29 acres that is like almost a block away, not half a block. It's like within walking distance. The one that we were going to put anywhere from, I think, Innocent said 6 to 10 to 12 tiny homes could fit there, depending on the size, versus the Holly House. I'm just saying this so Michaela understands what you're talking about, versus the Holly House, which is the land that actually has a house on it that we're going to put a tiny house in the back so that folks can see what this tiny house is going to look like. Curtis and I had a conversation a couple days ago, and we were talking about the 0.29 acre one as a space where artists can come and actually still put tiny houses there, but have artists come and have it where they can be, it's in resident piece. So it still would be like a pilot, the same as like the Holly House is right now. My conversation with Curtis a couple months ago, actually, I think we may have touched on this a little bit in our conversation a couple days ago, was basically if I were for BIPOC staff were able to actually buy the house that we're actually in right now and the land, they would be open to that. So the question that you're asking, Em, is a really difficult one to answer because it's both and, right? Like right now we're like in the middle of really trying to like get land. Like that is the big, huge piece, right? And so in order to do that, we have to show what we can do. And so I'm using this house and hopefully the 0.29 acres of land to actually show what we can do so that we can garner enough money to do purchases either with or without the Brighton Development Group. Like I'm not tied to the development group just to get our land. But because Brighton Development Group has 5 to 6 other Black-owned businesses that are working on property development and real estate acquisition and all of that stuff, it makes sense for us to be working with them, you know, and so that we're leveraging each other's networks and power and stuff. So I don't know if that actually answers your question. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm sure. If you want to add more, Curtis, feel free.
No, I was just going to say, I think it would be wise, and I don't know if we'll have any time on Thursday for after our 2 o'clock meeting or anything to further and discuss this. I mean, the main goal quickly is to get some tiny houses in place so people can see the vision and they can see how it will look on property. 100% committed to Carol and helping find property in the area so we can put those tiny houses on property owned by her organization. And we want to help facilitate that. The Holly House at this point doesn't seem like that's a particular good idea because of its zoning. But again, I don't want to get into the depth of that conversation because we should just deal with our other stuff now. And I have to say, I need to excuse myself now because I have to go. But are we still on for Thursday at 2? Okay. Great.
Yeah. And my question is about where exactly the solar project we're talking about is going to go, because I'm still, maybe we'll talk about this more on Thursday, but I'm still not feeling 100% clear on like the fate of the Holly House. Like I get the demo site, I get the vision stuff, but if Holly House, like if the project ends up purchasing land somewhere else, it ends up happening somewhere else, is the Holly House like going to be sold to like a private residence, or like is it like what's gonna happen to the Holly House? Like are we gonna do all this development for a year or two on the house and then the project isn't there anymore? Like what's the fate of the Holly House?
Yes. And I think that's something hopefully we'll have some time. And if Thursday doesn't work, then we'll set up a time. Like I said, I'm open to having a more in-depth conversation on that. So. And also, as far as solar goes, I'd also like to bring, you know, including on the detail of who's been working with me on actually someone who can say, this is where the roof goes, this is how it's going to all work. And I think I bring somebody in to help us determine what we can actually get done too. So, because I don't know if Michaela if that's your specialty or not, or you're more of the person that helps facilitate.
Yeah, I am more of a coordinator. I can send you a list of installers and folks that can give you more technical detail. But I am.
No, I have the best consultant in the world who got mine done in hours. While everybody else still doesn't even have their plan in the city. Ours is already is ready to go. So I'll bring him in to help us say what we can and can't do. And he's already worked with Sherry down in the office and knows Sherry and understands this whole process.
So for me, Curtis, just before you go, it would be really good to know what we can do on the house site. And I understand Anne's question as well. Like if we do it there, is it going to disappear, or why are we doing it there if it's going to disappear? But part of the model has to do with sustainability. And if these 3 grants will not work for the Holly House, I want to know what will work for the Holly House. I would like you to come in with answers and suggestions and proposals and not necessarily this can't be done, this can't be done, this can't be done. So I'm just throwing that out there. Just throwing that out there. Just throwing it out there. That's all I'm saying.
And that's why I'm going to bring Lewis in, because Lewis will tell us what we can do. I will instruct and I will channel you, and I will say, do not tell me what we can't do, Lewis. Tell me what we can do.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah.
I will channel
Because
you.
once we know that, I think it'll be a more fruitful conversation with Michaela. Although I really I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of these 3 different grants. I still am yeah.
No,
And for me, the question is if it's a temporary installation, a temporary demonstration site at Holly House, is Stack the applicant or is Brighton Development Group the applicant? If ultimately Brighton Development Group is the owner and Stack would end up relocating somewhere else, then I could see issues of Stack applying for these grants, getting them, and then vacating. Or it might lock Stack to something that it doesn't want to be locked to. So I just want to make sure that planning is clear. It could be that it's a collaboration, but maybe Brighton is the lead applicant. Just things like that, or whatever. Kind of whose house is the project, really? Yeah.
well, I'm glad I sat through this, because really, solar has not been in any of this is our first discussion on solar. So, and I know it's been on the table there, and there's been discussions on it, but this is the first. And so, so now like I said, I can get my team together with Carol, and we can figure out what we can do. And go, I'm 5 minutes late. I will.
Okay. Thanks, Curtis.
We'll talk on Thursday. On Thursday, we'll deal with some more on this.
Sounds good.
Hi. See you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Ciao. All right.
What I'm hearing is Curtis, if I can synthesize what I'm understanding, Curtis is going to check in with his consultant to see what's possible for the Holly House
Great.
that will long-term be either stay as a Brighton property or become a Stack property. And then as far as deploying the model in another property, this conversation is just an FYI. The solar grants are just kind of a visioning exercise in what you could possibly go for if and when the property is acquired and then developed. So it's a visioning exercise for Stack's future property, and then Curtis is going to check on what's possible for Holly House and how that might look in terms of ownership. Is that about right?
Great.
Yeah. And the other question that I have is, these grants, do they only pay for the technology itself, or would they help cover program management costs, or that would be the cost of the organization to actually do all the coordinating and organizing?
They only pay for hardware. That's the annoying thing about solar grants. Most of them, some of them do, they'll pay for project management or development after you get the grant, which sometimes takes a while to get there. But these ones that I sent you, I'm trying to think about the energy technology one. These ones that I send you will only pay for the hardware.
Okay.
And installation thereof.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking the question about who is the lead applicant and who owns the project. I would just be really aware of Stack. It could be at a cost to Stack ultimately to do this. If it does a lot of the organizing, the applications, the coordinating, and then doesn't ultimately own or benefit from the project. Like I said, maybe Stack could be a partner, but Brighton kind of eats the cost, so to say, of going through the process of applying and permitting and all that stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially if he has to, especially if to be eligible for it, especially the first one, we would have to do multiple properties, right? Because I know that there are 2 or 3 other houses running on the same block, like Curtis said, that they own. So if they had to do, in order to be eligible, had to do more than one property, then it seems to me that makes sense to me, that they would be the ones that would apply, not us.
We could also look into if, you know, the kind of anchor house on these other site, like plot options is an arched cabin. We can like put feelers out to them about whether their design supports solar and stuff like that.
Whether the arch cabins do?
Yeah.
They do. That's the reason I picked them. And that's what I was trying to explain to Curtis, is that depending on which direction or how we put the tiny house in the backyard, then the solar could actually go onto the tiny house. It doesn't have to go on the roof of the house, unless I think that he was thinking that it would go on the roof of the house just because of the square footage in order to meet the criteria for the first grant.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then I just don't know, Michaela, do you know about kind of like what the permitting process is for getting solar approved? Like, I'm wondering if it would be the same for a tiny house on wheels that could be moved.
I am not too familiar, but it goes through like regular building permits. So if the thing is on wheels, I don't think that there is, if it's on wheels, or if it is under, like, you know how there's like a 10 by 20, maybe it's even smaller, 10 by 12, you know, where you don't need to permit stuff under a certain size. If it falls under that, I don't think there would be a permitting process, but
Emmanuel would know.
I'm just guessing there.
Yeah.
Emmanuel should know that. She's on our team.
Well, the tiny house on wheels is actually treated like an RV. And so you don't need a permit to put solar on RV. Anything on wheels that's like the small size, that's like it's not considered a habitable structure. Permitting would be different.
That would be interesting to see if these grants would be open to supporting. Yeah, like I said, we'll talk more on Thursday, but my concern is that if the project moves to a different location, then, you know, I think Holly House could still get it, but I think Brighton should be the lead applicant. But if Stack is going to end up owning the tech, then it should be tied to 100% secured Stack assets. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I think that's all the questions I have. I think I'm questioned out. I think my brain is pretty tight from all this kilowatt talk. Like,
wow. So much for like going down the path and just visioning a little. Yeah, just visioning a little what's possible, what's out there. Sometimes it's just helpful to know, like, you know, what funding and ideas are out there. It was really nice to hear about where you're at with Brighton Development Group and kind of a pilot for future acquisition and development. So that's really cool. I'm really excited.
Yeah, we have our tiny houses coming. It's getting shipped on the 8th. There's 3 of them. One's going to Bellevue Art Museum from November to April. One's going to be in the backyard. And then I got a really tiny one, like the smallest one, which we're going to turn into a sauna and put it in the front so it invites people in. Yeah. So we'll see. I don't know. It's all an experiment.
Build party?
Yes, we are throwing a build party.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're excited.
This has been a good conversation too, because I just saw that Seattle City Light project yesterday and I tried to read through it and I was like, I have no idea what any of this means. So thank you for explaining it in human language.
Which is one reason why I feel like they need a coordinator or something, because who's really going to understand this? Like all this, the lay person is, I don't know. Anyway, you'd have to have a consultant in order to really understand what it is they're offering, you know? That was my other question, really quick, is do they offer these 3 grants, well, probably not the 3rd one, annually every single year? I know you said you could apply for one of them like quarterly or something like that, but will these always be in the pipeline? Like,
So the City Light program is dependent on how much money they bring in. So you know those little inserts you get on the bill that's like, can add $5 to your bill to support green energy. Those contributions go into a fund that then is deployed through this rec purchase program.
Wow.
So depending on how many like people continue to give and how much they contribute to the fund, that will continue to roll out. And their project manager kind of like tweaks the program all the time, I guess. And so this cycle and who is eligible and the projects that are eligible are haven't really been predictable. The Centralia grant has been pretty predictable, but they have a cap on how much they fund per year, and it's basically first come, first serve, starting the first of the year. And so they went through their full funding in the first quarter of this year, and then they're going to reopen it Q1 of next year. So if we get an application in like at the end of this year, it'll be at the top of the stack for next year. They are reviewed quarterly, assuming that the funds last that long. What was the third one? Moonshot is like a rolling application. They go hard and fast. I love that program. So that one is just like a rolling fund. I don't know if they are like running it down or if that's actually coming out of I think it's a donor advised fund. So I think that is just a rolling thing for as much as the money's there. So I don't think there's a cap on that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michaela.
Thank you. See you later.
Thank you so much for the updates. This is great.
We'll be in touch again.
Great.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, guys.